Dave McClure. He spent time at PayPal. He founded a company called Aslan Computing, and he up in the Northwest. He subsequently was involved in the Facebook Founders Fund, where he invested in a lot of companies you've heard of. He's an early investor and advisor for Mint.com, and 2 years ago he founded 500 Startups. Let's give a big Startup Grind welcome for Dave McClure. Here we go. Welcome.
Hello. Hi. All right. You're not on. Not on yet.
There you go.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Welcome.
You guys must have not very much things to do on Thursday nights.
What is Palo Alto?
Yes, exactly. Are we all going to the Nut House after this?
Which house?
The Nut House?
Yes. Okay.
You're not local, are you?
No. Yes, I am actually.
Okay. That's like 3 blocks that way.
No, I just come here to AOL. I pretty much do everything here. I sleep here. I eat here, like that one guy.
All right.
Well, welcome to the Startup Grind. We like to start things out by just getting to know you a little bit, hear about your background. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up. Tell us about.
I know I'm really hard to find on the web, so it's all a big secret.
Well, we're gonna dive deep, man. We got handkerchiefs. We got everything. I mean, we expect the tears to flow. So tell us about West Virginia. Tell us about your family and tell us all about it.
I guess I
Do you remember
am
that?
a hillbilly from West Virginia. I grew up there and in Maryland, so I spent, I guess, about 8 or 9 years in both West Virginia and Maryland until I went to college at Hopkins, Johns Hopkins in Baltimore, Johns Hopkins University, where I almost got kicked out at least once, maybe twice.
For what?
Yeah, well. Let's see. Was I legal at that time? I'm not really sure. Let's just say that my first entrepreneurial business was not a legal one, shall we say. I'll leave it at that.
And your
I did manage to graduate barely, so that was good.
And your dad was a musician, is that right?
Dad was a music teacher and musician. Actually, a lot of music in the family.
High school, junior high, what kind of or just
elementary
private?
school music teacher, kind of honky tonk band in West Virginia, I guess. Played organ, still plays organ. Actually, both grandmothers were music teachers / students. One was an organist, one was a vocalist. My mom played flute. My wife's a jazz pianist, or was, at least at one time.
You play any instruments, or?
I played piano for about 10 years, played cello for a little while, sang for many years.
Okay. And so you go to Johns Hopkins, you immediately get into engineering, into computer science, or did you have, what were you planning to be when you grew up going into college?
Oh, I don't know. An astrophysicist, an astronaut, some computer, like all that shit went by the wayside. I guess, well, I'd started playing around with computers pretty early. Not sure I exactly remember. Sorry, probably my parents did not get me a TRS-80. I probably started doing at least some programming when I was 12 or 13, maybe a little bit before that.
Okay.
Did some programming for my mom's company at one point on some reports. Went to school a little bit early, but kind of took a long time getting out of school. And I don't know, I kind of bounced around. Originally I was a physics major, then I was a EE, electrical engineering and computer science major. They didn't have a separate CS department, and then I ended up as a applied mathematics major. Most of my work was coursework was computers and math.
Okay. And what your first job out of college? What did you do? Where did you go?
My very first job out of college, I was doing some programming and consulting for a company in Baltimore or in the area. They were doing fleet transportation leasing, and I helped write a program or package on Paradox, I guess. For a while there, I'd taken a summer off, or at least a semester off college, and had done some computing on DBase platforms. So for anybody who's way that old. So
there's not
database programming, I guess. PC database programming for the most part.
Baltimore's actually got a pretty decent, I don't know if it did then, but it's actually got a pretty decent tech community, right? I mean, they've got
Yeah, I mean, well,
PayPal's got an
Hopkins has
office
a pretty
there.
good engineering school. They're more
Yeah.
known for the med school
Sure.
and pre-med, but they actually have a pretty strong engineering department. I think the computer science program, which now exists, is one of the top 10 or something ranked. I know they have a lot of folks that do pretty well at some of the computer programming contests.
Yeah. And so tell us how that led. What kind of?
This is fucking boring, dude. Really?
Is it really?
It's like.
Well, it's boring to you.
I nearly got thrown in jail 3 times in college, and after the third hooker, boy, they really got after me. Sorry. Oh, there we go. Yes,
Sorry,
that's
Mom.
the politically incorrect part. Yeah, so I don't
So
know.
you move from there, you go, and then,
I was a pretty smart kid in high school, but everything was pretty easy, and I didn't really develop a very good work ethic. When I went to
Sure.
college, I spent way too much time partying and playing frisbee and pool and everything else, and I kind of barely got through college. And I don't know, it was fun, but I probably did most of the learning after college.
And tell us about, you start Aslan Computing, is that right, up in the Northwest? Tell us how that kind of happened.
Yeah, well, no, I came out west, so I guess when I first came out here, I was actually looking to get into teaching. I wanted to do science teaching for, I don't know, high school math, and I kind of thought, hey, that would be fun to do. I hear there's problems finding good math teachers. And I got out here and sort of did a little research on that, and was like, wow, that's a pain in the ass. I have to do 2 years worth of, I don't know, part-time or substitute teaching. At first I had to get an accreditation and all this other bullshit. I would have probably taken a huge pay cut. And I was like, well, okay, maybe I'll do that later. At the time, I'd really been coming out here thinking about going to Japan. This is kind of late 80s, and at the time, Japan was really where everything seemed like tech was going. And then Japan kind of blew up in the early 90s. And along the way, I kind of fell in love with the Bay Area. It's really just, it's an amazing place here. I don't know how many of you guys actually live here? Yeah. So you should count yourselves fucking lucky. It's, I don't know, not lucky. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you chose to come here, but this is a special place. And I hope that many things in Silicon Valley go to other parts of the world, but we should not kid ourselves. It's an amazing community of people, and a lot of creative thought and opportunity. Probably too many white people, but a reasonable amount of diversity.
Sure.
A lot of brown and Asian people, and some Hispanic people. Not too many black people, but we have a good bit of diversity.
Well, and you spent time at all these companies where whether it was PayPal or Mint or the stuff you did with the Facebook fund. I mean, it seems like you've had that.
I've been a witness to genius. I feel
you have been a witness
much
to genius.
Salieri to. I say I'm always Salieri to the Valley's Mozarts. Hopefully I'm not poisoning any of them, but yeah, I've seen a lot of amazing shit. It's kind of astonishing at times. I don't know. Have personal relationships, at least at a minor level, with the people who've started PayPal, LinkedIn, Yelp, Zynga, Yammer, YouTube. Don't really know Mark that well at Facebook, but know a lot of people at Facebook. Several early Googlers, a bunch of folks at Twitter. It's like, and I'm still fucking poor. Well, not completely, but I mean, I don't know. We're kind of getting into that post, but
yeah. Well,
I don't feel unlucky. I mean, you might sound like that feels unlucky. I feel like that's kind of special, but it's strange.
Yeah, well, you've so let's talk about 500 Startups, which is a pretty good brand too. So, you start you had your 2-year anniversary this week. Is that right?
2 days
so
ago.
Congratulations. Let's give it up for that. That's pretty awesome. So let me just quote from you.
That's not very old for a venture capital firm. We still got a lot to
You're
prove.
doing it. You made it.
We're a toddler.
Let me quote you from a McClure post where you talk about the founding of the company. Well, one day this is in a quote, a beautiful little unicorn farted, and the next thing you know, our star was born. Is that? I wonder if you could just go into a little more depth and then talk about the drug policy at 500 Startups.
We only mandate that you use 1 drug per day. No.
Oh, that's a bad sign. The intern screaming.
Yeah,
Yes.
intern. Yeah, right. You're fired, bitch. Sorry.
Earmuffs.
Sorry, I guess we skipped the part. So I was a programmer, database person in the Valley for about 5 or 6 years. Started a small consulting company. That was mostly.
Well, you said that was boring, so I thought we were moving on. Are we
no,
going
it was
back?
like all the high school shit, but I don't know. So, well, I just want to give you some context.
Yeah,
so,
please,
like, I
please
was
do.
a programmer for about 5 or 6 years. I was an entrepreneur for about 5 or 6 years. I was a marketer for about 5 or 6 years. I've been an investor now for, I guess, where I've been paying attention maybe 4 or 5 years, and a little bit longer than that where I wasn't paying attention. So I kind of have had a range of experiences, at least that have given me some sense for the Valley and tech companies, particularly being on the engineering side and the marketing side. That's not that common a combination, and I think that was, I think that's why a lot of the way that I'm built is just because of those two things.
Are you the ultimate growth hacker?
No, no. I mean,
What?
so that term
no one
is-
got that joke. I guess it wasn't that good. Sorry. I won't try to be funny.
Yeah.
What did you enjoy programming? Did you not enjoy?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
what
did.
do you, if you could do something all day long other than what you did, if you had to do one particular skill or one job, what would it be? Would it be marketing? Would it be
Writing one-liners on Twitter? That would be it.
So you'd be
so
CEO of
I didn't really
Box.
make an active choice to stop programming. It was kind of like I started a consulting company, and that sort of grew, and gradually I had to take on more business, sales, project management responsibilities. And one day I woke up and realized, hey, I haven't put any line of code down for probably 2 years, and I started to be irrelevant. So I kind of stopped doing programming because other things started taking more attention. And I guess if I'd had to make that choice over again, I'm not sure I would have done it. I really did enjoy programming. I thought I was a pretty decent programmer. I don't know if I was great, but I like doing other things, and so that was okay. I mean, I really enjoy marketing's fun. It's great. It's kind of a very creative process. Programming was too. Entrepreneurship is also, although it's usually harder than the other two things. And investing, we're still figuring out. I don't know. There's some parts of it that I think are easy.
What pieces do you think had the most impact on, let's say, what you're doing today? Was it your experience at Mint? Was it your experience at living through PayPal, or the investing stuff at Facebook?
My experience, failing miserably at running my own company, or probably at least not having great success. So I spent 2 years doing independent consulting, maybe 3 years growing a business from 1 to 20 people, although it went 1 to 25 to 10 to 15 to and then, PayPal was definitely very amazing in a lot of respects. I got to work with some really, really smart people and some really, got to be part of an IPO and part of an acquisition and part of creeping bureaucracy. And then saw several amazing companies that were launched by people who came out of PayPal. But I really emphasize that, nobody gives you credit for, running a company that failed, or in our case, we were acquired. It was a small acquisition, but, I spent arguably 5 to 7 years doing a shitload of work for not very much money in an acquisition at less than $1 million. So it was more like a paid MBA, I guess,
Sure.
than anything else. And I wish I'd had that 5 to 7 year experience compressed to like a year or two. But there were a lot of lessons learned from that, mostly just about me and understanding, where I was failing miserably at being a leader or being a CEO, or understanding how to run a company or finance or sales and all sorts of shit that maybe some of which I've learned. But that was really actually helpful. I think there was a lot of things that I learned from that experience that I would not have gotten from being employee number 250 or 300 at PayPal. And and still, I think there's also great experiences you get from being at a large and successful company. And it wasn't like super large, but at that time it was 300 people. So, a lot of entrepreneurs will ask me, like, should I go start my company right now, or should I go join a big company? And I don't think there's any set answer. I think there are great experiences that can happen from both. Just realize that when you're starting your own company, probably, by default you will fail. Most cases. Yeah.
I mean, it feels like that experience that you had is a pretty normal experience, right? I mean, we read about these guys like Zuck or
Yeah.
and it's just like, it's like, man, can I ever be like that? And I think that that to me is like that experience is inspiring to me because of all the failures I've had. And you get to where you're at today, and you had some rough experiences. I mean, I think it's nice to hear that that's normal.
Yeah.
Or is it? Is it not normal?
No, I think it is normal. Well, to the extent that people who want to become entrepreneurs are normal, that's probably not normal. But I think it's very difficult to figure out the basic fundamental, at least if you're trying to build an internet-style company that has, some significant scale and growth potential. There's lots of different moving parts to that. There's product development, whether that's engineering design, other parts of that. There's marketing and sales, there's financing, there's managing a team, there's raising money, there's dealing with success and dealing with failure, and just like most people, there's no like college for entrepreneurship. I mean, MBA programs, in my opinion, don't really teach you entrepreneurship. And working at a big company doesn't really teach you entrepreneurship. And so, the closest thing to teaching you entrepreneurship is doing it. And to some extent, I think, maybe Y Combinator and 500 and a few other places are schools for entrepreneurship, at least for internet businesses. But even, Techstars and YC are maybe 7 years old. We're 2 years old. So like, I don't think anything's really figured out yet. So that's maybe where we're trying to go. So I would generally describe like my 20 years of stumbling around the valley. I'm trying to compress that time frame for other people into 1 or 2 years, and hopefully not have it be as painful as my experience has. It hasn't been painful that much, but I mean, it was a struggle for a lot of times.
It was difficult.
It's mostly mental issues, like where you think you're awesome, and then you find out, hey, you're not so fucking awesome. Or you may be smart, but you ain't rich. And and then you meet people like Max Levchin and Aaron Patzer and Dave Sachs and all these other people who are like, wow, these guys are really fucking smart, and
they're also
and
rich.
they won early, right? So like that's well, I think Max has maybe had an interesting set of experiences because he won early, and then Slide was not quite so much of a win, although I know he probably made money on that, but that was probably...
He's made some good investments though, right? I mean, he's
early
Yelp, very, very early Yelp
he
guy.
probably made more money from Yelp than he did from Slide.
Yeah.
Aaron's a tremendous entrepreneur also, and had really great success by the time he was 26 or 7. I'm not sure when the acquisition occurred. So, you're a 40-year-old guy hanging around people who are 25 who are kicking ass, and you're like, what the fuck? I'm an idiot,
Well, you're doing pretty good. I mean,
no, but I mean that. Like, I think I'm a smart person, but the evidence doesn't necessarily support that. And so, to be able to,
this room would disagree, right? I mean,
I know, but like, it's difficult to maintain ambition at the same time as honesty. Like, you have to be somewhat brutal with yourself to be able to learn. Like, if you're too rationalization works for many things, it doesn't actually work well for learning. So entrepreneurs, I often describe entrepreneurs should be like cornerbacks. You should have a short memory about getting beat, but you should try and learn from that experience. And it's hard when if you've been around the valley for 10, 15 years and you had to have a major win, you're like, fuck, I suck, right? And you're like, and still and usually you'll like, it's natural. We'll make excuses for why we didn't win. Oh, it was that thing that happened, or somebody else's fault, or, if only that VC had given me money, or if only that deal had gone through. And when I hear that from entrepreneurs, I sympathize, but like it also is like, interesting. You gotta try and be really honest with yourself and not move the goalposts on, where there's the goal, it's still there. The goal hasn't really changed, you have. And understanding, taking failure and dealing with it, or taking, non-success, shall we say, and trying to learn from that. When like the results are very fuzzy, right? It's not easy to understand why did that business fail. Like, Was it because I wasn't a good enough leader? Was it because, I didn't raise money at the right time? Did we do a deal that we shouldn't have? Did we build the wrong product? It's not clear evidence why you failed or why you didn't win. And so it's difficult to learn from that. And it's also and you start the rationalization process, and it's also hard to, do that. You need rationalization to sort of get you past things, but having ridiculous ambition and, incredible honesty, those two things are difficult to have in your head at the same time.
How do you, when a founder has this explicit vision, this is what I'm going to do, I know this is the right thing to do, this is going to be a $100 million
vision
company.
Is bullshit. Vision is bullshit sometimes. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean that completely. It's important to have a vision, but
but what I was
vision
going to say
is 10%.
Well, when it fails, when that idea, hey, I had this great thing, this was going to be a success, and it fails, how do you, how as an entrepreneur, how do you get through that? How do you fight through that? How do you fight on to the next thing?
I mean, I think you need to find small successes where you can, and so even if the business failed, did you get a product launched that worked? Did someone send you a note about your about page, or someone send you really, I'm serious. When I was at Simply Hired, I spent one night till 3 or 4 in the morning writing this awesome about page. Who the fuck cares about an about page, right? And yet, a couple people noticed it, and the CEO was like, "Wow, actually, we've been getting a lot of comments about that." Sounds kind of stupid, but it was okay, that was it. That was something we did. We had a problem with error messages where there were a lot of job search. Simply Hired as a job search engine, and when we were initially building it, we had a lot of blank results for certain parts of the country or certain types of jobs. And we're wow, that's gonna suck. So we came up with funny error messages, right? It's sort of dumb, but you're well, we know we're not gonna have results in those areas, so let's be creative about the conversation. And
yeah,
it's interesting, small things like that I do take pride in that. That was one of the things that I felt we created a voice for that particular product that felt different from other things. There were some things that I did at PayPal that were sort of interesting and notable. I mean, there's one email campaign that I actually changed that got a 20% increase in lift or something. I'm pretty sure that made $50 or $100 million for the company. I was great. So if I fuck up the rest of the time here, at least I earned my stock
you paid
options,
for yourself,
right? It's okay, I wasn't a complete asshole. So small victories where you can find them. But you kind of have to be thinking about entrepreneurship is, not overnight. I think the story is told as if successes happen overnight. Yeah, Facebook's huge, but Facebook took 7-10 years to kind of get where it's at. Most businesses of any scale do take at least 3 to 5 years. There's a few exceptions to that. So I mean, I think if there is a, whether you believe Malcolm Gladwell's, sort of 10,000 hours or whether there's some other mastery component, I think there's probably at least 3 to 5 years of intense sort of entrepreneurial experience before you even get the framework. And maybe in certain situations that can be compressed, but probably I would say, operational experience in an area for 3 to 5 years, and then entrepreneurial experience for 3 to 5 years, and then maybe you have a real shot at it.
Yeah. Do you take that into account as you're looking at these companies who you're hiring in terms of the entrepreneurs?
We don't fund a lot of folks out of college. We do it occasionally, but I generally think that most people should probably get 5 years work experience before they jump into being an entrepreneur. There's a couple of people that I think are exceptions to that. I mean, I think it's good for them. It's just not necessarily good for the investor.
It's like an expensive career fair. That's what Ann Co. called it.
Well, I mean, given the chance to start a company or get an MBA, I'd probably say start a company. You probably learn more. Probably cost you less.
What are some of the things on that subject? What are some of the things that make for a great incubator or accelerator? Are there blocks that you have to boxes that you have to check or things that you have to have that? I mean, you guys are.
I'm biased, obviously. Yeah, I mean, I think we're still trying to put together the recipe on that. I think, at least for what we're doing, which is probably consumer internet businesses, small business SaaS, maybe some enterprise, more family and parenting stuff these days also. Engineering, design, and marketing disciplines are really important. So, and variations on those three in particular matter a lot. Probably some pitch coaching and fundraising, although if your business is doing well, then you probably don't need much coaching on the pitching, and if your business isn't doing well, then pitch coaching doesn't help so much. So I think there's some eye chart Naval thing that Naval put together that was like traction, product, or traction, team, product, pitch, or something like that. It was like those were levels of importance. I probably agree with that. I don't know, I'm kind of rambling here. So
let's break into those.
No. I want to talk about this a little bit.
Please go ahead.
I mean,
would love to talk about it more.
I like to hear myself talk. Yeah, I mean, I think the little bit of funding and sort of compressed time frame to get a product together, that part is good. You may not get it right the first time with that. You might need to do a couple different iterations. I think getting design and UX components in early is important. That's one of the things that we were trying to emphasize, and we do usually a design and UX review within the first 2 to 4 weeks when people come in. I'd like to think that was one of the innovations we introduced. I don't know if YC and Techstars were doing that before we started doing it. We emphasize a program that's physical space, so the companies are there. I mean, well, I should explain that we run an accelerator program and then we invest at seed in other companies as well. So probably about a quarter to a third of our investing goes through our own accelerator program. Another third to a half of it goes through companies who are raising seed who've been through other accelerator programs. But I think having that environment where you're around other people is important, other people who are working on products. So we intentionally, wanted to get class size to around 25 teams. So we're doing 25 to 30 teams twice a year. And so there's this interesting thing. When I was doing the Facebook class I taught at Stanford, and then when we were running Facebook Fund, we saw this, which is, you think that 25 teams is more than you can actually handle. We had 110 people apply to the class we taught at Stanford, and we tried our darndest to scare them out. And I think 90 people sort of were there by week 2, and there were 75 people by the end of the semester. We had 25 teams.
Wow.
5 were miserable. 5 were amazing. And there was about 5 or 10 that were pretty good. And so the 5 that were amazing would have been amazing anyway. The 5 or 10 that were pretty good, we think got better because they were around the 5 that were amazing. And so there's this interesting thing that you have when you have 3 or more sort of outliers. They tend to compete with each other, and they raise the bar on each other. And then the second group that might not have been successful models behavior after the first group, and then they level up. And you got to be careful not to have too many losers, otherwise everybody models around the losers, and that's not good. Sorry, not talking about any of you. You're all awesome.
We got some losers here.
But so that, I think there was
banana
something
guy in the
around
back,
the guy
definitely
in
a
the
loser.
banana, definitely a fucking loser. What up, dude?
Oh, wow. Even more so now. He lifted up
bananas.
got a sign. Oh, man. Okay.
Bananadebt.com or something like that. Awesome. Well, you got your airtime.
Is that a banana subscription service? Because he will invest.
The banana suit was the airtime. Awesome. Good job. So
he just hijacked this thing. He just
I did.
hijacked
That's
this,
okay.
dude. And it worked. Did you see him walk in? There's a freaking banana in the back of the room. What just happened right now?
Dude, I have been
These
there.
are your people.
I have been that
your
banana
friends?
before.
Are those the 8 guys, the Rumpelstiltskin
No.
guys?
Different. Exactly.
Oh, man.
Yes.
That's our fault. That's Todd. He's our guy.
Don't quit your day job,
Wow.
buddy. Oh, okay, sorry. How's that paying for you?
It sucks. I'm writing the checks. It's not good. No, it's not.
Anyway, so there was a serious thought to this commentary at some point. So the point being that there's some success rate for outliers. You want enough people to have high level competition and then have other people model behavior after that high level competition. And I don't think you get that with just 10 teams. So there's a lot of accelerators out there who fund 10 teams, and I think it's actually not good. You don't have enough sample size to ensure success. And so probably, YC is different because they don't have them there all the time. They just come in for office hours. They're like at 80.
Once a week, yeah.
But it's impressive, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff they're doing with scaling up to that size that's really amazing. But we kind of chose, at least for our program, we wanted physical space, and kind of thinking the 75 to 125 person tribe size was like an interesting size.
This is just founders. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. So two or three founders, occasionally, a couple of non-founders that are there
also working there.
But 25 teams, about 2.5 people, maybe 3 people. We probably push the envelope on that a little bit because we have other teams there. But about 100 people.
Yeah.
Seems to work.
When your first session, or the first group that you did was 12 teams. The last one that you just launched was 27. Is that right?
We did 12 or 14. I can't remember. We added a couple. Then we did 24. Then we did 34. And we thought 34 was a little bit too big. We backed off. This last group was 27. Actually felt like we could have done a little bit more. So maybe we might push to 30 again this time and see.
And that's about. You think that's the best. That's a sweet spot.
4 iterations doesn't enough to like really give us complete, and this is a particular instance, so, it might be different rules in different countries and geographies and other things. So I don't know, but it feels like right now some of that magic has worked, and some of it's just our ability to interact with people. Maybe if we designed that differently, we could scale bigger. But yeah, I think it feels like it's working.
The startups that are graduating in this latest class, and I attended your demo day last week or the week before.
You graduated.
And it was awesome. I mean, I was really impressed, and I'm not just saying that. I was really impressed. So
good.
What are these companies from this batch? What are they better at than say what have startups learned over the last couple of years that they didn't have before?
You mean in our classes
yeah,
or just generally?
Yeah. What are you seeing?
Well, I think we were getting up to speed. So we were, if I count the FB Fund cycle, I've done 5 batches now. So this will be our 6th that we're starting. And I don't know, I figured it would take 3 or 4 to just understand the dynamics. We were kind of still getting our shit together ourselves. We're still getting our shit together. So understanding how long the program is, the right set of mentors, talks, speakers, when do we introduce certain things, how do we get ready for the pitch session when we do design reviews. So there's a lot of things that I still feel like we're iterating on our own process and trying to make better. But it felt like it was enough time. I think the 3 or 4 month cycle is enough time. We might extend that a little bit. We were trying to do 3 sessions a year, and that was really tight. We weren't quite getting the cut over. So now we are doing 6-month kind of program now. Although I would say it's 3 months intensive and 3 months not so intensive, or they're focused on fundraising and other things at that point. But it's getting better. I mean, I don't know. I guess I shouldn't say. I think we actually have our shit together.
Yeah.
At least as well as anybody else. I think YC is definitely out in front by far, and they've had a lot longer. Well, I mean, if I maybe tout my horn a little bit, I think they've optimized for valuation at Demo Day, and they've done a great job with that, and they've obviously done a great job in filtering and selecting and bringing companies in. I actually think we probably do more involvement with the companies than our mentor program. I don't know, that's again my bias. But yeah, I mean, I think it's really helpful and educational to look at what's going on in the other programs. We're unusual in that we invest in other programs, so we run our own, but most people probably don't know, I think we've invested in like 35 YC companies, probably about 20 Techstars companies, a bunch of Seed Camp and AngelPad. So 10% of our portfolio is YC, and we're very strong believers in we run our own farm team, but there's lots of places that produce great athletes, and to use that metaphor. The other thing is that we're very internationally focused. So about half of the teams in this batch were from other countries, and we've done a lot of work. I would actually say probably we're the most active fund in the Valley, possibly even in the U.S., that invests outside the U.S., with the exception of maybe funds that actually have on the ground
offices
in other countries. But we've probably done 50 or more, maybe 60 investments at this point outside the U.S.
Yeah.
And
what advantages do those entrepreneurs have? I mean, what skill set do they have that's different from what we see here every day?
They speak other languages.
How does that?
You know what that
Get
thing English? Yeah.
Doesn't everyone speak English?
So, I don't know. So the map that I usually think of is, what are global actually, this is a good test. What are the global languages? No, French is not a global language. Sorry. Mandarin.
Well, he is French, so.
Spanish. No, sorry. Well, English, right? What's the fourth one? So
Just don't. No one say anything. He's kidding. He's thinking. It's like, geez, there really are a bunch of
So I would say
losers
the
in
four
here.
global languages that we care about a lot are English, Mandarin, Spanish, and Arabic. Those are all. English and Mandarin are billion speaker languages. English is probably 2 billion if you count second language speakers. Spanish and Arabic are probably about 500, maybe 600 million. Hindi and sorry, I don't know what you say, Bangladeshi or something. But Hindi's almost like a second language for most of the speakers, so it's a little bit more fragmented in India. And then it drops off considerably. I think you probably have Russian and Portuguese and German in there somewhere. But German and Japanese are really relatively isolated languages. Portuguese is isolated, but Brazil's a big country that's growing. Russia has, a lot of second language Russian speakers, but that probably decays in the next 20 years. Russia as a population is kind of interesting because it's shrinking, and there's out-migration. So, like, a lot of young adults in Russia leave Russia. It is a big country. So, if you kind of do the way that I like to think about this is you do language block times internet penetration times average GDP times growth over time, and that sort of gives you a sense of how you map out the world. And if you do that, then China's a little bit complicated because there's a lot of things.
Can you repeat that? Can you say that again? Slower this time, because some of these guys.
So it's language block times number of speakers in that language block times current internet penetration, which is different if you're talking about web or mobile, times average GDP per head in that territory, and then you look at growth rates of all of those things. Is population increasing or decreasing in that language? Is internet penetration increasing or decreasing? And is GDP increasing or decreasing? And that sort of gives you a playing field of, GDP available to spend in a particular language. There may be currency and country restrictions in addition to language. So, you may have a lot of Spanish speakers, but they may be fragmented across a bunch of different countries and currencies. In China, there's probably political risk, so there's other factors, even though that's a big country. Japan's kind of weird because, the macro picture from Japan looks really poor because the country's getting old and, GDP is flat or shrinking, but the internet market in Japan is going through the roof, and there's not very many entrepreneurs in Japan competing relative to size of market. And so if you're willing to learn Japanese and go be an internet entrepreneur in Japan, market's opportunity is phenomenal. And if you want to go to China and do that, you're competing with everyone. So it's people are China's amazing, and we actually think, yeah, China is amazing. Japan's probably equally amazing and interesting because of the relative market competition. And then also you have to think about it as an investor, how many people are trying to invest in those areas, so is it overvalued? We think Mexico is really interesting right now because no one is looking at Mexico and wow, 100 million person country, rising GDP. Spanish is spoken by a lot of other people, so we get a hub of Spanish kind of businesses starting in Mexico. We can expand those out, and there's nobody investing in Mexico. I mean, there are, but not that many people. And so we're kind of wow. And people are oh, drug gangs and beheadings and all this other crap. And you're yeah, whatever, right? It's a great...
Entrepreneurs.
Somebody else we ran into in Mexico is yeah, where there's beheadings happening, that's where all the action is. I was it's kind of fucked up statement, but probably correlated, right?
It's a lot easier to fire somebody. You never have to deal with all the awkward, moments
I'll
at the tech
leave you
events.
on that one,
it has happened in our organization for sure. What are these companies that you're investing in internationally? So one of these companies in the latest batch built themselves as Ring Central for Mexico. So Ring Central's here. So
yeah,
use Ring Central in Mexico if you're from Mexico. But what are these the types of companies that that generally that you're investing in? Are they taking business models that have worked in other places around the world, or are they doing things from scratch, or what are they doing?
It's not explicitly copycat, but I think it's, there's a lot of businesses in other parts of the world that haven't been built yet, and at least it's more the case that we're just not investing in crazy fucking business models, whereas I think there's still a lot of crazy stupid shit that happens in Silicon Valley, which sometimes works, like Instagram. But like we get caught up in the wrong models a lot of the time. So most of the things we do are pretty straightforward. The three basic businesses that we probably invest in are transaction commerce businesses, subscription businesses, and lead gen businesses. All of those three models are relatively low risk on sort of revenue model. And so like when you're an investor, you don't want to like have risk in multiple areas. That just compounds the chance against success. So probably we try and reduce product risk by looking for functional prototype before we invest, or at least previous product success with a founder or team. We try and limit revenue model risk by it being least rational, or focusing on a problem that someone would pay for. And then most of the risk usually is team risk and distribution, customer acquisition risk.
Yeah. And distribution is one of your temples. Talk about if I'm a startup and I'm coming in to pitch you guys, do I have distribution figured out to some degree? Is that something where you guys really bring a lot of expertise to the table? Or
well, I'm not going to say that we're going to be the magic sauce for distribution and solve all your problems, but we'd like to. Most of our investments look at internet platforms for customer acquisition, so search, social, mobile, video, email. I don't know. We're looking for something that's got easy sort of scale through some type of platform or channel. So typically Google for search, at least in every place except China or Russia. Facebook and Twitter for social. YouTube for video. Maybe LinkedIn for some professional platforms. Apple and Android for mobile. These days starting to look at Pinterest a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of falls off after that. I'm not sure. I mean, email is a platform in some way, and SMS is also. But there's probably 5 to 10 platforms of significant interest. And so what we kind of thought, my partner Christine Tsai worked at Google and YouTube for about 7 years. I was at PayPal and knew a lot of the Facebook and LinkedIn folks that moved on from PayPal. And so we kind of like quickly, got to know most of the platforms. They're all here for the most part. There's a few. I guess Amazon's not local and Microsoft isn't local these days as much. But we, with the exception of Kinect and Xbox, I don't think Microsoft has figured out a great distribution strategy for its platforms, which is kind of crazy. It's got a huge set of assets. So, we kind of got to know all these different platforms, the people at those platforms, because I ran the Facebook fund for a while. And so, our model is like, okay, you've got a functional prototype, you've got a simple business model, you've got at least an engineer, design, marketer, 1 or 2 of those 3 on the team. We give you a little bit of money, we try and get the product to some amount of, functional use that's better, and we try and help you figure out a distribution strategy that, if it isn't cash flow neutral, at least has the possibility of being, cash flow positive at some point in the future. And then we just see who's successful. It's sort of, it's not always like it's us. A lot of times it's just them. And it's a set of experiments we run to see who can figure it out.
Yeah.
If they figure it out, then we keep
investing.
Then
they keep going.
Yeah. So I think that's the biggest thing about our model is we don't think we're that smart. Whereas I think most other investors actually think they're really amazing. They just think they're awesome. They think on, I'm going to invest in 30 companies and 5 of them are going to be like billion-dollar companies. And like the evidence does not suggest that is a rational hypothesis at all. And even for the people who do it once, it's not a rational hypothesis to do consistently.
Yeah.
But we think that somewhere north of 75 to 100 investments per fund, you start to get to predictability. I mean, right now we're doing 200 to 250, but we'll probably dial that down once we feel
Where are you at as of today? How many of y'all done?
361, I think actually
Wow.
was the count. I'm not sure how many we wired today, but I think 361 companies total, 256 in the first fund. We're probably at about a little over 100 in the second fund.
Wow.
Probably doing about 150, maybe more than that per year. Probably between us and YC and maybe SV Angel, I'm not sure. If you count the start fund investments, then that's a little different. And it's not a race. I mean, just, I don't know, kind of is, but that's not going to help investment performance. I think there's a certain number of investments it just takes to sort of ensure a reasonable amount of success. So the typical VC model is usually, invest in 30 companies, take board seats. Invest in 30 companies over 4 years, take board seats, follow on maybe a third to a half of them, and expect, massive outcomes, usually billion-dollar outcomes. I just think that's a really, really difficult strategy. As much as I respect Peter Thiel, talks about power laws and all that other shit, and he's right, but your ability to figure out what's going to win is very questionable. So just because there's an emerging power law for one of the 30 that you pick, you don't know when you pick usually what that is. So I think that emerges after about a year or two. Maybe you understand which ones are the big winners. I didn't know wildfire was going to be a huge win when we made the investment.
Yeah. Which it was. Congratulations this week.
Yay!
Awesome.
Well, yay for them, because they actually did all the work. I just wrote them a check. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that I'm pretty confident that our model makes sense. Other people may think we're crazy, but the model itself is actually very simple.
Well, when you started, did you really? I mean, was the goal from the beginning? Hey, we're going to eventually invest in 500 companies. I mean, was that
No.
real? I mean,
no. We're going to invest a lot more than 500 companies. We'll be at 500 next year.
I know, but to say that at the very beginning, I mean, it was pretty kind of a crazy thing to say, yeah. But you're there, you're almost there.
Yeah, again, just being
Are you
able
change
to
the name
able to
like
invest in companies does. No, we're not going to change the name.
1 billion, 1 billion startups.
Billion startups.
Apply today.
So, getting back to that other point, I think that most VCs in the Valley ascribe to this statement. I think, Andreessen talks about this a lot, and other people do. Is there's 10 great companies every decade, or there's 2 great companies every year, and most 90% of venture returns are about finding those 2 companies and getting in there, and we have to be awesome, and we have to great brand, and they're thinking too small. It's a strange statement to say, but what I mean to say is, I'll be damned if I'm going to be satisfied with just finding 10 great companies every decade. Fuck, there's thousands of small businesses, small, $10 to $25 million a year revenue businesses that are great. They solve problems. They're really awesome. And great. Okay, so Founders Fund and Andreessen Horowitz and Sequoia, they'll go after the, big fat front head. Give me the rest of the long tail. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses.
Wow.
Yearning for a viral loop. And they're
going to give it to you as soon as this meeting's over, trust me.
Whatever. Well, some of those guys are my LPs, so yeah, right. We'll talk about that. Don't bum rush the fucking stage. You will not get a check. The worst way to try and get money from me is to rush up to me after this meeting. Guarantee everybody wants to come pitch me after this meeting, I will not write you a check. That's negative influence. Do you understand that? I'm just saying that right now so that when you come up to me and pitch me, you remember what I said before? You're fucking stupid. So
what about Banana Split back there? Has he got a chance?
Depends on if he wants to pitch me. Unfiltered pitches in 30 seconds with people clamoring is just the worst environment.
Should we just walk through that quickly? You've talked about this 100 times. What does it take to get an investment? You don't start with Dave. You start with the team of 170 advisors, right? Is that the place to start, or is it somewhere else?
Or the 500 or 600 founders. So we mostly work through referral, and it's not because we're lazy. It's not because you're awesome. It's just because that's we want people who you have worked with or know. Because it's a fucking pain in the ass to evaluate deals in I've never met you before. Here's my deck. Here's my product. And like, yeah, okay, well, yeah, I can do that evaluation. Or I can go to the 30 other deals that I've got in my inbox that I haven't answered from people I've worked with, who they know, who think they're awesome, and I haven't returned their emails. So why the fuck am I going to listen to you? Sorry, I'm being straightforward, but like, I just want you to understand why I'm being an asshole when you hand me your business card and say, hi, can I get your email? And you're like, yes, sure, and I'm not going to read that. So I hate to say it, it's not fair. It's not fair, right? So like.
But that's not anything that's not normal. I mean, that's how everybody operates, right? I mean, Anco was here a few weeks ago, and they have the exact same policy on their website. You need to get a referral. Someone needs to vet you that we trust and.
Well, not everybody has as much email as I do, so like for a while they'll still say that. Tomas Corte at AngelPad still says you can email me, and I'm like, great, send him your email. He's really awesome, by the way. So I mean, it's like work through referral. We want to fund people who are smart. We want to fund people who our founders or our mentors think are smart. And if you've had a working relationship with them, or they're willing to put money in, then we'll pay attention. It's kind of basic and straightforward. Typically, if you're running a business that's in a particular domain, then we would say talk to other people in our portfolio who have similar functional expertise or similar customer domain. We have 360 companies at this point. We probably got something in the portfolio that's somewhat similar, hopefully not directly competitive. I was losing my point here, but the point I was trying to make was like,
don't come pitch you. That's the point.
No, that wasn't the point. The point I was making is like the venture capital thesis as it's been constructed over the last 34 years is fucked up. It's like we're gonna be better at picking winners than the other guy, or we're gonna be like more awesome at attracting you because we look cool, and like. I don't want to beat somebody else at being, a better backslapper or like faster to the punch or, whatever. I'd rather be more helpful and operate at scale. Like, so the things we're trying to do is get better at providing education and mentorship resources that other people don't do. Like, even other incubators, I think we're fucking considerably better on the amount of education. We may not be always as good at getting monetary increases in valuation, but I think you'll learn a lot more.
Yeah.
And we invest every cent we have into adding more resources to figure out those things. Like, I challenge you to find a program that's got more people connected at Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, YouTube, whatever. It has more international connections. It has more access to design resources, engineering. There are a few others, but there's not very many. And so I think it actually takes a lot of effort to put that shit together. And from an investing perspective, like, you don't get a return on that right away.
Yeah.
And so these funds that have like 200 million under management, 500 million under management, and they're taking it all home in fees, like, you guys are fuckheads. Like, you're not reinvesting in your own company. Like, VC firms that like take home big ass fees and have like 10 people on staff, like, shit, we got barely 40 million under management. We got 10 people on staff right now. We're going to have 12. Like, we're paying ourselves shit. Like, we better make carry because there's no other way we're going to make any money. But I think we believe strongly in our own vision. We believe strongly in our own vision. And largely because of all the shit that I went through over the last 20 years, I kind of know what I wish I need. I wish I had all this stuff now. And so we're going to figure it out. I mean, we're going to, whatever that school of entrepreneurship looks like, we'll be there in the next 3 to 5 years if we're not there already.
Yeah.
And I do think it will make a difference.
Well, it seems like, too, the time and energy you guys have put into doing the whole, I mean, just the international thing alone is, with Geeks on a Plane and Geeks on a pontoon boat and all those different things.
It's fun. It's actually easy because no one else is trying it. I shouldn't say that. It's not easy, but like, there's a company in Colombia that we saw today or last night. I was looking at the profile and I was like, growth's amazing. No one's looking at this company. No one wants to invest in it because it's like way outside the fucking U.S. I'm like, great.
You've been to Colombia a few times, or have you been there before?
Once,
One
2
time?
years ago.
Okay.
We didn't go on the Geeks on a Plane trip. I went down with the State Department a couple years back. I mean, just, Latin American market is huge and growing. South Asian market is huge and growing. Southeast Asian market is growing. East Asian market is growing, complicated in some areas. There's interesting stuff going on probably in the Arabic market over the next 5 years. I mean, we've just made our first investment in Jordan. And it probably takes 3 to 5 years to get the connections there. But like, the world is not, 300 million people in the U.S. that's where all the a lot of people are and a lot of interesting stuff. But there are 6.5 billion people that are not in the U.S.
I've heard.
Yeah, and so right now, it was weird because like we like sat down and it's like, oh, okay, what's our differentiation strategy? We can't look like YC, we can't look like Techstars. How do we what's our emphasis? And like international and women. Wow, okay. Wait a second. International and women is like 98% of everyone. It's like, oh, okay, great. We have got two niche strategies that are 98% of the universe. Awesome. And frankly, we're crushing it on both fronts. Like, nobody's close to us on either of those.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk
so
about.
I'll give everybody else the white male American market, and I'll take the rest of it.
So you've got 50. You've got 50 female CEOs. You've got 100 that are.
We got more than 50.
More than that. Okay.
We had 50 probably 6 months ago. I think we're probably way past that now.
100 co-founders, or you must have more. These are the numbers from your TechCrunch article a few weeks ago. I mean, who read Dave's Women in Tech thesis? Okay, we've actually got copies of it here. We're gonna hand out to everyone. But
so you mean the Angel Investor Challenge thing?
Yeah, the Angel Investor Challenge. Yeah, exactly. So talk about. So first of all, you have more females working at 500 startups than males, right? In your staff, you do.
We do? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I guess we do.
Is there a male discrimination problem at 500? I mean, this is a hard-hitting journalist you're going to get on the stage.
I think our next 3 hires are all male, so we might flip the strategy back.
Tip the boats.
See. I don't know.
What's that?
Affirmative action. Yes, right.
People seem to have misidentified the real problem with women investing. Talk to us about what is the real problem with
Well, I mean, I don't know that there
is
is a problem per se. I mean, and it's a little bit dangerous for me as managing other people's money and with fiduciary responsibility to enact any type of affirmative action program. I think most of my LPs would have a problem with that. I might suggest there's branding advantages that gain us potential down the road, but let's not focus on that. There's not a lot of women in tech. Their numbers are getting better. I would say substantially in the last 2 years, we've noticed a lot more women founders. That has definitely changed. I don't know women in VC. Some people say it's getting smaller. Some people say it's growing. But the real thing that stuck out to us was there were very few women investors, angel investors. Sorry, let me clarify that. Angel investors, not VC. So managing their own money, not managing professional money. And
is there a percentage? What percentage would you say it is?
I don't have a number. I just visibly, I don't.
There aren't a lot.
Relatively speaking, I see way more women founders than women angel investors. And where there's a clear trend towards more women being founders, I don't know that there's a clear trend towards women being more angel investors, maybe just recently. And they're also not very vocal or visible about it. So even though there may be angel investors out there who are women, they don't necessarily brag about it as much as guys do, whether that's a positive or negative thing. So the challenge is, I don't think women see themselves in that role very much because there's not Ron Conway. I mean, there is Esther Dyson and, maybe Katerina Fake and Marissa Mayer and a few others are notable, but there's not so many visible female investors. And I think it just changes the dynamic. And a lot of women that we've invested in who are doing businesses that may not be as familiar to guys, whether they're kids or fashion or whatever, the typical response is they'll go pitch the guys, and the guys are like, oh, I'm not sure that's a big market, right? Fashion commerce, they know that's a big market now. But one of our companies is doing kids activities and met with some male investor who I will not name who said, well, that's kind of a small market. And I was like, you fuckhead, you are such an idiot. I'm not sending any more people to you. The student activity market, depending on how you define it, is at least it's $30 billion just for summer camps, and the amount of money people spend on kids going to karate classes, ballet lessons, music, it's this fucking huge ass market. And where do you go for guidance on student activities? There is no Yelp for for kids activities. So Activity Heroes, this company, we thought, wow, it's great, really big opportunity. And we couldn't find VCs ready to jump into it. We found angels, and then when I started calling some people, the women angels got it right away, or at least people who are parents, I would say. I'm getting a little bit specific around that example, but so I think it makes a difference. I think we can sort of change the sort of process. I hate to change the ratio tag, so I'm not going to say that. But yeah, I think it's just a simple case of having visible role models, and then things tip.
Sure. Talk to us about what is the WIN challenge?
So we are trying to get women to step up and agree to do 3 investments of $5,000. Sorry, not women, anyone, to do 3 investments of $5,000 a year or more in the next 12 months.
Okay.
Those, you don't have to be a woman investor. You don't have to invest in women, although we expect some of that will occur.
It's not just targeted at women.
Well, I would say there's benefits to having more women investors, whether they invest in men or women, and there's more benefits to having investors, whether they be men or women, invest in women. And generally, we just think, hey, we'd like to see more people out there. But
Sure.
Again, selfish interest for us, perhaps, in helping syndicate deals with some of our companies, although we don't care if they're with our companies or not either. So yeah, I think that I don't want to give people the wrong impression. If you invest in tech companies, as an angel investor, you're probably going to lose your money. Most of us don't do it because of that. After you've done 10 or 15 of them, you start to get the hang of it. So here's a great pitch. You're going to lose all your money. You need to spend 5 years figuring this shit out. After about 10 or 15 painful investments, you might be able to not lose your money in angel investing. Let's get started. You ready? Come on with me. So it's a little bit of a weird pitch, but most people in the Valley are already crazy anyway. So, and that was really the target. I was just talking to women in tech. It was frustrating to me that, this is gonna get me in trouble. As many women who bitch about fucking not having enough women speakers on panels or all other crap, fucking that shit really matters not that much. First of all, we ask a lot of women and they turn us down. So it's really, people say it's easier to get, because the same most famous women get asked all the time, and they don't really want to be the speaking circuit 365 days a year. And there's just not as many, successful women in tech just yet. So the pool is smaller and the demand is higher. But that's not the issue, I don't think. I think there's plenty of visible examples of women founders these days anyway. But getting them funded is the problem, and particularly, it's not the VC problem. They need the first 25 to 250K. That's really where, if they get off the ground and they're successful, then VCs will fund them. If they get past that level, male or female VCs will see that there's opportunity there and get it. But getting that first believer when they don't have much, that's what's really hard. And even in Silicon Valley, where we have so much activity, it's still sort of challenging for those folks to get off the ground.
So the WIN Challenge has a total of 121 people that have signed up so far.
So far, that's awesome.
And I thought it was specifically for women because there was 118 females, and there was just randomly there's 3 dudes in there.
For some reason, I think
I don't know what that's all about.
The guys were filtering out the guys because we wanted it to sort of be. We wanted to steer the visibility a little bit, but maybe we'll let the guys back in.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if those guys were moving into female, or I didn't know what there was going on there, but if it's for everybody.
For some desperate motherfuckers in the Valley, it's probably the only way you get a date. I'll invest $5,000 in your company if you go out with me. Don't. Yeah. Already off the rails.
Tell us, is your you're here at Startup Grind. Is your startup a grind?
There's days, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. This week was good, but.
Yeah, you had a good week.
Yeah. I just want to finish that one thought. So, the thing about women in international, and we invest in a lot of places where the strategy is contrarian and where we feel there's bias. I'm not trying to fix any problem with not being enough women founders or whatever. I just think that women are probably overlooked by other investors slightly, or valuations are slightly lower, and so we think it's an arbitraged asset class where. And if we actually corner the market, we'll get all the smart women to come to us, and then we'll rock. And Wildfire was run by a woman, SlideShare was run by a woman. We had another exit, Moonfruit was run by a woman. We've had great performance rates so far out of women founders in our portfolio. Same thing for international. Probably same thing for married co-founders. We found we had a lot of married founders in our portfolio. So wherever there's like slight bias against something, we actually think there's opportunity, and so we kind of lean into that. So any handicapped crackhead entrepreneurs, we want to invest in you.
They're here.
Yep.
A lot of the crack guys are here.
That'll win me a lot of fans too.
I love crack. They'll come straight up and pitch you, Dave. Straight up. Talk about.
Oh shit.
We're gonna take questions from the audience in probably about just a couple minutes. If you want to start lining up here in the center, I want to just ask you about two things. One is investing as a first career. You know, guys that come out of college and go straight into VC. This is you've kind of found. This is an outside observer's. I know we're best friends, but this is my outside best friend observer perspective.
Yeah.
We're not really best friends. We just kind of met.
Honey.
So that's weird. More weird. It's getting worse.
You free at 10, baby?
The founding of 500 Startups. Well, one day a beautiful little unicorn farted. Okay, so is it a good idea? I mean, you kind of went through this path of you were an operator, you were an entrepreneur, and then you worked through all these companies. You know, do you have an opinion on that, a take on that? Should you be an operator to be a VC? You know, if you start out as a VC, are you going to have an advantage 20 years down the road? What is your thought?
Well, I think it's hard to break into VC when you're young, unless you happen, to be one of those folks who gets into an MBA program at, Harvard or Stanford or Wharton, and even then you probably have a long track to get to venture. I've been trying to break in for 10 or 12 years, and I just had to start my own fund. That was the only way I actually got in. Well, I should say that Founders Fund gave me a job, but Sean wanted to hire me for marketing. I had to work a deal to actually get to invest.
Huh. So did you see that's what you wanted to get into? Were you kind of,
I don't know. I've been wanting to do it. It's a sexy thing. Obviously, both being an entrepreneur and being an investor these days are like super sexy. And actually, most entrepreneurs and most investors fail. Like it's like weird, right? It's like, hey, it's this sexy thing where most people fail. Like that's not really very smart.
It's so sexy to be broke. Have all your best friends hate you.
And also, I think most venture investors tend to be people who've had success building a large company or taking a while to get there. And I didn't go through either of those paths, so I'm sort of the oddball. I haven't had any substantial outcome as an operator.
Yeah.
I wasn't born rich. I didn't go to any of those.
We went to Johns Hopkins is a pretty good school.
Yeah, but as an engineer, I didn't go to an MBA program or anything. So I have no like traditional training in business or finance.
Yeah.
So that was probably why I had to start my own fund. I think there's some interesting things that you learn by being an amateur investor and then by going into it more as a career, but it's probably better to spend your time as an operator, at least for the first 5 or 10 years. I think you kind of want to establish domain expertise in an area first. In our case, it's weird because we just happen to be a startup that's in venture. Like that's why we're a startup too. I'm an entrepreneur too. I just happen to be in finance.
Yeah.
I'm trying to disrupt my industry.
How's that going?
Okay.
Seems we're kind of pretty well.
Kind of kicking ass, I think. We'll see.
Let's give Dave a big round of applause. One last thing. Can't leave yet. Don't leave. You're making a huge mistake. First of all, it's your 2-year anniversary. You have the huge wildfire acquisition, and it's also your 35th birthday on Saturday, right?
46th birthday,
oh, wow.
But yes.
So
the 11th anniversary of my 35th birthday.
Can we sing Happy Birthday to Dave here? Let's go for it. Ready? Here we go. On 3. 1, 2, 3.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dave. Happy birthday to you.
Very good.
So I know you're not supposed to tell what your wish is, but I just wished you all get funded.
Tonight on. Oh no, never mind.
Not by me.
Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.